You're with Julian on the Brown Note and a review of The Northman. Now, Roger Eggers, the director, American director, came on the scene in 2017 with The Witch, 2015 with The Witch. One of the defining films of the last decade for me. Anna Taylor-Joy, I don't remember seeing her before in the lead role, and this incredible Puritan horror movie set at the time of the first Puritans arriving in America and dealing with their religious piousness combined with superstitions that were real for them because they were growing crops and failing and dying of starvation and stuff like that. So all these things were very different to how they'd be perceived now, and it was a masterpiece. There's the only rival in A24 lore for me, that brilliant studio, or as a horror film that decade, I think, is Hereditary. Equal joint first for me. I loved it. And The Lighthouse that followed, another art house triumph, the most art house film he'd made. He's taken over from the British director Ben, I can't remember what his name is, that has gone off the boil with his version of Rebecca and some more mainstream fare, which has just been really lost it. But so far, Roger Eggers has not set foot out of his artistic vision at all to please anyone. The art house was this box frame, black and white, two-hander with a brilliant performance, probably the best William Dafoe performance I've seen, and Robert Pattinson stuck in a lighthouse beating seagulls to death. I said it was overrated when it came out, only because it got absolutely stellar reviews. I said it was really good. But it's certainly an iconic film and it was a very interesting one. Well, he's gone maximalist and widescreen with The Northman, the Game of Thrones, the movie. Oh, but it's so much more. I had expectations of this film, which were that it was going to be his most commercial and big budget and so on and all of those things. And it's certainly his biggest budget film. It was a bit of a failure at the box office, but obviously it's going to be. So this is... It took me like 3/4 of this film to understand that it's a remake of Hamlet. So one of the most famous Nordic stories of all time is of Prince Amleth, whose father, the king, is killed by the king's brother, and the king's brother then marries his own mother, and he has this, he wanders the film before a climactic battle with the new king, which consumes them both. And it took me like 3/4 of, I think this story is so familiar. Prince Amleth. Oh, right. So obviously the most famous version of the Prince Amleth story is by William Shakespeare, which is probably the most famous play in human history. And it broadly follows the same story. It just it is the Prince of Denmark sort of thing. It follows a king played by some really good people in this. Played by Ethan Hawke. Is the king of this region, sort of in Denmark, and he's away a lot. His wife's Nicole Kidman. A lot of low grade actors in this. And he's out at sea fighting battles and comes home and he's kind of distant to his wife. You can tell that she's not happy. And the brother is also quite a dark character. Claes Bang, he's a great actor in this. He's definitely going to get into some more American films. He's the brother of the Ethan Hawke character, and he's quite dark. He's got his own child. I think whoever gave birth to that child's died. He's a very angry man, Alexander Skarsgård's Amleth, but we see a child version of Amleth at the start, and when his father, the Ethan Hawke character, and the young Prince Amleth go off into the forest, they're cornered by the Fjolnir, the brotherless character, who then basically tells them that, I'm going to murder you. You didn't see that coming. Which is true, he didn't. And at this stage, William Dafoe turns up as well as like a seer, like a mythical sort of a guy that puts potions in fires. And it's on the way back from meeting him where a couple of prophecies are sort of foretold. that he's murdered. The king's murdered by his brother. The brother takes over the kingdom and tries to kill the young Amleth, who escapes, cutting the nose off of his attempted assassin, who tells the new king that the boy's dead. But the new boy runs off and finds the most wonderfully named group of medieval people in history, the Berserkers. See, it's kind of Russia, I guess, a bit. And they basically rape and pillage villages and all of this stuff. And they just go in and they get into this catatonic state where they end up round a campfire and chanting, and then go and fight, and became known as the Berserkers, hence the term. And during one of these raids where they just kill everyone and enslave everyone, it's a pretty brutal world. The character of the now adult Amleth, played by Alexander Skarsgård, who's come a fair way as an actor, beefcake playing Tarzan, given his opposite again, Nicole Kidman in Big Little Lies or something. He won, I think he won an Emmy for that, for acting. This is his dream project. I think he's American born, but his history is from the Nordic region. He might have even been born over there, I'm not 100% sure, but he is a driving force behind this film being produced and written by Eggers himself, but Sean, who is an Icelandic poet, I believe, associated with Björk. So basically, he on one of these village expeditions where they murder everyone, Sia, played by Björk. Really, honestly, everything's just fitting in now. She tells him of this prophecy foretold, which is, he has to go and he has to fight for his father's honour. He has to kill the uncle that killed his father, and that's his fate, and he has no choice. And at that point, he then leaves the Berserkers and he finds out that his uncle has actually been driven out of the Danish region, or whatever it was called back then, by a much more powerful king, and he's fleeing to Iceland to set up a new, smaller kingdom in Iceland, and taking all his slaves with him to establish this colony in Iceland. He then turns himself into one of the slaves of this king. Obviously, the king has no idea who he is, because he thought he died in childhood. So he goes to the island and befriends a seer character, a female one, played wonderfully by Anna Taylor-Joy. And over the rest of the movie, the plot of Hamlet plays out with... and a bit like the Green Knight last year, there are these sort of metaphysical and supernatural encounters with beings along the way, and he sort of obtains this indestructible sword from this big knight that then vanishes, and the blue foxes of Iceland come out and taunt the village where the new king's trying to establish a settlement, and it's all incredibly atmospheric. Basically the Alexander Skarsgård character then sets out for revenge against all. And what did I think of this? I think this is the best film I've seen this year, and establishes Robert Eggers as the greatest current director in the world. There is a lot to recommend about this film. I think as a retelling of Hamlet, it does so wonderfully. I've watched it a few times. I found the cycle of the plot and the storyboard actually riveting, but the biggest shock I got is I thought this was going to be his most commercial film. This is closer to the Lighthouse than it is to Game of Thrones. This is still art house stuff. It doesn't make any concessions or take any prisoners. The performances of the main crew, Skarsgård's never been better. Nicole Kidman, her character sits in the background doing nothing for a very long period of time, until she has one of the greatest scenes I've ever seen, where she just pops up in a meeting with Alexander Skarsgård and has just an absolute masterclass, and it turns everything on its head. There are some great revelations along the way. The relationship with a brilliant Anna Taylor-Joy, who was one of my favourite actresses last year for Last Night in Soho, and will be again for this film. She's excellent. It's a harsh, brutal film. The cinematography should be awards winning by Jarin Blashk. It looks even better than The Green Knight. It's magnificent, and I think maybe another film that makes use of Ireland, not for these beatific rolling green valleys, but for this very harsh, abrasive landscape. And there are lots of uses of sequences that happen with like the entire coloration of a particular scene or a particular environment is all sort of tuned to, you know, sepia tones or very blue tones, and it just looks magnificent. And the soundtrack is equally awards worthy by Robin Carolan and Sebastian Gainsborough. Absolutely magnificent. Medieval tribal rhythms, and it builds in intensity throughout. It's another absolutely striking thing. So the direction's magnificent, the acting's excellent, the screenplay's excellent, the cinematography's excellent, the soundtrack's excellent, and it builds up to this like end of Lord of the Rings crescendo, which is magnificent. So this is the best film I've seen this year. I think it's magnificent. I think it establishes Eggers as probably the best director in the world. So I'm going to give The Northman a 9.5 out of 10, which has not been done more than a couple of times in the last few years. 9.5 out of 10 for The Northman. Yes. This is